There isn't really someone separate behind the experience to whom things are happening who can make things happen. But there can be the conviction that that is the case. And I would call that conviction itself the ego. Now, when the ego falls away, of course, there isn't really anything there that falls away. What it is it's the loss of that conviction of separateness. And the loss of that conviction is simultaneously an immediate obviousness that there is only an undivided wholeness with no boundaries anywhere. I have this mask here, and it's going to represent the ego. Now, it would be more ideal if this was something like a thin, transparent film of fog to symbolize the ungraspability of it, the insubstantiality of it. But this tangible mask will have to suffice. I'm going to put this mask over the camera to illustrate the falling away of the ego and this immediate obviousness of an undivided wholeness that I'm speaking of. Now, to the separate sense of self, it seems as though there's an experience out here, and it is being interpreted as out here as opposed to in there. So this notion of duality, of a here and there, is coming from a fundamental sense of separateness, of contractedness, feeling oneself to be incomplete and in need to find more. The egoic conviction of separateness is the most exhausting state because it perpetually feels that it's lacking something, and so it's constantly looking for a better experience. It's looking for something to add to itself to make itself complete. Now, it's a hopeless search because there isn't actually anyone there who's separate, who's incomplete in the first place. And when the ego falls away, that's simultaneously the open obviousness that this seeming boundary between this and that never really existed. It was an illusion. It's an open obviousness of this undivided wholeness. So that feeling of contractedness, of being here as opposed to out there, it opens up. It's recognized that there never really was a solid, stable boundary between anything. It was an illusory boundary. And this opening up is a revelation that the separate ego never was. The story that things are happening to me and I need to find more is an illusory story. It's based on a fiction. In the ultimate sense, there isn't a real difference between ego or not ego, because again, there isn't anyone there. So there's no difference that can be cast if it's all ultimately empty. If the mask itself has nothing behind it, there's no difference to be made. However, within that experience of separateness, there does seem to be a difference between the two. There seems to be a better and a worse. And that's all the sense of separateness is. It's the need for a better experience. The kicker is the whole thing is based on a fiction, an illusion. And just to clarify, the body itself isn't the ego or the separate self. The body has nothing to do with it. It's equally part of the experience. It's the ego which feels that the body is in its control, and so it uses the body as its tool to try to get more for itself. When the ego falls away, that doesn't actually change much of anything about what the body does. The body still has its basic wants and needs. That doesn't need to stop. What stops is the ownership over that.